There is a particular kind of heaviness that comes from simply being present in your own life. Not sadness, not despair, something quieter than that. A weight that sits just behind your name, behind your face, behind the way you move through the day. Existing feels like effort, not because something is wrong, but because you are aware of yourself while you are doing it. How you feel yourself showing up. You feel yourself being perceived. Even in moments of stillness, there is a sense of carrying yourself, and that carrying does not announce itself loudly. It hums, it lingers. It asks nothing, but it takes something anyway. You wake up already holding the shape of who you are supposed to be, and you fall asleep still holding it, even when no one is watching. Over time, that holding becomes familiar, normal, almost invisible. But the body remembers the weight, even when the mind stops naming it. This way of being did not appear randomly. It formed quietly, the way habits form when they are necessary. There may have been a time when awareness kept you safe. When noticing everything, including yourself, was useful. When being careful with your tone, your expression, your presence, meant fewer consequences, fewer misunderstandings, fewer risks. You learned to carry yourself consciously because it helped you belong, or avoid harm, or meet expectations that were never spoken out loud but were always there. Responsibility arrived early, or sensitivity did. You noticed how people reacted, how moods shifted, how silence could mean many things, so you adjusted. You shaped yourself with care. You learned how to be legible, how to be appropriate, how to be steady. None of this came from failure. It came from awareness, meeting a world that asked for it. It's an awareness, once it becomes useful, rarely leaves on its own. Over time, that awareness settles into the muscles, into posture, into the way you enter a room, even when the room is empty. You begin to feel yourself as something that must be managed. Not controlled aggressively, just gently monitored. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Am I being the right version of myself here? The questions are not sharp. They do not interrupt. They run quietly underneath everything, like background noise you have grown used to. And because it has always been this way, it does not feel dramatic. It feels like maturity, like self-knowledge, like being thoughtful. But there is a cost to never being unobserved, even by yourself. The cost is not a single moment of collapse. It is a slow thinning, a subtle tiredness that does not respond to sleep, a sense that even rest requires a version of you to be present. You sit down, and part of you is still standing. You relax, and part of you is still watching. The mind never fully leaves the room. There is always a sense of posture, of identity, of selfhood being held together. Even joy can feel effortful, not because it is unwelcome, but because it still passes through awareness. You notice yourself enjoying. You notice yourself responding. Nothing gets to happen without being witnessed internally, and over time that witnessing becomes heavy. You may feel it most in the quiet moments. Not when things are busy or demanding, but when they slow down. When there is space. The space does not feel like relief. It feels exposed. Like something should be happening, or like you should be someone in particular inside that space. There is a faint unease, not fear exactly, just a sense that existing without performing yourself is unfamiliar. And so, the self steps back in, gently, automatically, like a reflex. You become someone again, even when no one needs you to be. There is no drama in this, no crisis. Just a gradual distance from the feeling of being unheld by yourself. You may feel connected to your life, yet slightly removed from it. As if you are always half a step behind your own experience, observing it rather than resting inside it. The world does not feel hostile, just feels demanding in a quiet way. Demanding that you keep showing up as someone coherent, someone consistent, someone recognizable even to yourself. And coherence takes energy. This is where the tiredness deepens. Not physical exhaustion, but identity fatigue. The fatigue of having to be someone continuously, of never fully setting the self down, of carrying your story, your patterns, your awareness into every moment, including the ones that could have been simple. There is a longing, sometimes barely felt, to be less defined, less shaped, less held together, not to disappear, but to loosen. To exist without having to maintain the edges of who you are. There may be moments when you catch yourself envying people who seem to move through life without this weight, who appear spontaneous, unself-conscious, unburdened by their own presence. And then, just as quietly, you dismiss the thought. You tell yourself you were just thoughtful, or deep, or careful. You remind yourself that awareness is a strength. And it is. It has protected you. It has given you insight, has allowed you to navigate complexity with grace. But even strengths can become heavy when they never rest. What is difficult about this kind of fatigue is that it does not come with a clear source. There is no single problem to point to, nothing obviously wrong. Your life may be functional, even successful. You may be doing what you set out to do. And yet, there is a low-level sense of depletion that does not make sense on paper. A feeling that the act of existing requires more effort than it used to, or maybe more effort than it seems to require for others. And because there is no visible wound, the tiredness feels private, almost illegitimate, something you do not quite know how to name, even to yourself, so you carry it quietly. You adapt again. You learn to live with the weight the same way you learned to pick it up in the first place. You do not complain. You keep going. But the body notices the accumulation. The nervous system notices the constant readiness. The subtle vigilance of always being someone in the world, even when the world is not asking anything of you in that moment. Over time, this can create a feeling of distance from your own inner life. Not numbness, but a gentle disconnection. As if you are present, but not fully at ease inside yourself. There is often shame hiding near this experience. Not loud shame, just a faint self-judgment, a sense that you should be more grateful, more energized, more at peace. After all, nothing is obviously wrong, so why does it feel heavy? That question circles quietly, unresolved. And in the absence of answers, the mind often turns inward. It wonders if the tiredness means something about you, if you are weak or unmotivated, or somehow failing at a life that looks fine from the outside. This is where understanding matters, not as a solution, but as context. Because this heaviness did not come from nowhere. It came from years of paying attention, of adapting, carrying awareness as a way of moving safely through the world. The fatigue is not a flaw, it is a signal of how long you have been holding yourself together without rest. It makes sense that this would feel heavy. It makes sense that existing would feel effortful when the self has been on duty for so long. There is nothing here that needs to be corrected. Nothing to push against. No version of you that needs to be replaced with a lighter one. The experience itself is not a problem to solve. It is something to be recognized, to be allowed to exist without explanation or urgency. Sometimes simply knowing that this tiredness has a history is enough to soften the edges of shame around it, not to make it disappear, but to make it less lonely. You are not broken for feeling this way, and you are not required to turn this awareness into growth or insight or change. It can simply be what it is, a sign of a life lived attentively, a self that learned to stay present, even when presence came at a cost. There's dignity in that, even if it is tiring. Even if it weighs on you in ways that are hard to articulate? As this understanding settles, there may be moments, brief and unforced, where the self loosens its grip slightly. Not because you tried to make it happen, but because it felt safe enough to pause. These moments are quiet, easy to miss. A breath that drops lower, a thought that does not finish, a second where you are not watching yourself exist. Nothing dramatic happens, there is just a small easing. And then life continues. This is not a story about arriving somewhere else. There is no finish line where the weight lifts completely. There is only the recognition that the heaviness has meaning, that it came from somewhere, that it belongs to a part of you that was paying attention for a long time. And sometimes, being seen in this way, even by a quiet voice inside your own mind, is enough for now. You do not need to resolve this. You do not need to transform it. You are allowed to carry it gently, without adding pressure to become lighter. Existing can feel heavy, and still be worthy, still be enough. And for a moment, here in this space, there is nothing else required of you. Just the permission to let the weight be named, and then, for a while, simply held.